Impossible geometry. The alarm screamed through the monitoring station like a dying animal. Senior analyst Kethvar's 4 eyes went wide as he stared at the readings on his screen. After 20 years of watching empty space, something impossible was happening. Commander Zexval, Kethvar called out, his voice cracking with excitement and fear. You need to see this. Commander Zexval walked over slowly. He was old, tired, and had seen false alarms before. His purple skin was marked with the scars of 3 wars, and he moved like someone who had stopped believing in surprises long ago. What is it this time, Kethvar? Another asteroid? Zexval asked with a heavy sigh. No, sir. Look at these energy readings. Something big just appeared in Sector 779. Zexval looked at the screen and his expression changed. The numbers didn't make sense. Energy signatures this large should come from a star, not from empty space. But there was no star in Sector 779. There was nothing there at all. Run a full scan, Zexval ordered, and call the other stations. I want to know if they're seeing this too. The scan took several minutes. When the results came back, both aliens stood in silence. In the middle of empty space, something massive floated where nothing had been before. It was huge, bigger than their largest battleships, but the shape was all wrong. What is that thing? Kethvar whispered. The object on their screen looked like a ship, but not like any ship in their databases. It was long and dark with strange angles that seemed to hurt the eyes when you looked at them too long. Parts of it looked smooth and curved, while other parts had sharp edges that cut through space like knives. It made no sense. Ships were either built for speed or for war, for beauty or for function. This ship seemed to be built for all of these things at once. Try to scan its interior, Zexval said quietly. Kethvar's hands shook as he worked his controls. The scanning beam reached out across space toward the strange ship. But when it touched the dark hull, something impossible happened. The beam bounced back, but not in a straight line. It curved and twisted like light bending through water. Their most powerful sensors couldn't see through the hull at all. The hull is absorbing our scans, Kethvar reported. But sir, there's something else. Look at this. New readings appeared on the screen. The strange ship was scanning them back. Its sensors cut through their station's shields like they weren't even there. Whatever technology the ship used, it was far beyond anything the Zephyrian Empire possessed. This is impossible, Zexval muttered. No species in the galaxy has this kind of technology. They watched the ship for hours. It didn't move, didn't attack, didn't even send out any messages. It just floated there in space, watching them watch it. The silence was more frightening than any weapon. Reports started coming in from other monitoring stations. The strange ship had appeared on all their sensors at exactly the same time. It was real and it was massive. Whatever species had built it had technology that made the most advanced galactic civilizations look like children playing with toys. Within 6 hours, the news reached the Galactic Council on the capital world of Nexus Prime. Emergency meetings began immediately. The 3 great powers of the galaxy, the Zephyrian Empire, the Hegemony, and the Void Walkers, had been fighting each other for centuries. But this ship represented something none of them had seen before. In the council chambers, holographic displays showed the mysterious vessel from every angle. Military analysts tried to understand what they were looking at. The ship's design used principles they didn't recognize. Its weapons were hidden, its armor was impossible to scan, and its very existence challenged everything they thought they knew about physics. Where did it come from? Demanded High Admiral Vexcol of the Zephyrian fleet. Ships don't just appear from nowhere. Our deep space sensors show no record of it traveling through normal space, replied Chief Scientist Mortek. It simply materialized in that location. No jump signature, no warp trail, nothing. Could it be a weapon? Asked Hegemon Ralthes. Something designed to frighten us? If it wanted to frighten us, it's working, muttered Void Walker Representative Nix Omega. The debates went on for hours. Some wanted to destroy the ship before it could act. Others wanted to try communicating with it. But everyone agreed on one thing. This ship represented either the greatest opportunity or the greatest threat the galaxy had ever seen. Back at the monitoring station, Kethvar was still watching the mysterious vessel. He had named it the Ghost Ship because of how it appeared from nowhere. But as he studied the readings, he noticed something that made his blood run cold. The ship wasn't just scanning their station. It was scanning everything. Deep space telescopes, communication arrays, military bases, even the capital worlds themselves. Whatever species controlled this ship, They were learning about the entire Galactic Council at once. "Commander," Kethvar called out, "I think it's mapping our entire civilization." Zexval looked at the data and nodded grimly. "Send this to the Council immediately. Tell them the ship isn't just watching us, it's studying us." The message reached Nexus Prime just as the Council was deciding what to do. The news changed everything. This wasn't first contact with a new species. This was first contact with a species that had been watching them all along. Emergency protocols activated across the galaxy. Military fleets began moving toward Sector 779. Diplomatic teams prepared for contact with an unknown alien race. Scientists worked frantically to understand technology that seemed to break the laws of physics. But on the mysterious ship floating in empty space, the beings inside were already several steps ahead. They had been watching the galactic powers for longer than anyone imagined. They knew about the wars, the politics, the strengths and weaknesses of every major civilization, and they had finally decided it was time to make themselves known. The ship's hull began to change. Lights appeared along its surface, forming symbols and patterns that no galactic database could identify. After hours of silence, it finally sent out a signal on standard communication frequencies. The message was simple, broadcast in perfect galactic standard language. "This is the United Earth Ship Defiance. We request permission to speak with representatives of the Galactic Council." Earth. The word meant nothing to anyone in the Council databases. No planet called Earth existed in any star charts. No species called humans had ever made contact with galactic civilization, but somehow they spoke the Council's language perfectly. Somehow they had technology beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen, and somehow they had appeared from nowhere in the most contested region of space. The greatest powers in the galaxy had spent centuries fighting over territory and resources. They had built massive fleets and conquered countless worlds. They thought they knew everything about the universe around them. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The species that shouldn't exist, Ambassador Theknor, had negotiated peace treaties with a dozen species, and had seen the worst that war could bring. His green skin bore ritual scars that marked him as one of the Council's most experienced diplomats. But as his fleet approached the mysterious Earthship, he felt something he hadn't experienced in 50 years of service: genuine fear. The diplomatic fleet consisted of 12 ships from the 3 major powers. They represented the combined might and wisdom of galactic civilization. But next to the Earth vessel, they looked like toys. The human ship was enormous, its dark hull reflecting their lights in strange ways that made his eyes water. "UES Defiance, this is Ambassador Theknor of the Galactic Council," he broadcast on all frequencies. "We come in peace to establish communication with your species." The response came immediately, in perfect galactic standard with no accent or translation errors. "Ambassador Theknor, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth Ship Defiance. Permission granted to come aboard for discussions. Please prepare your environmental suits for human atmospheric conditions." Theknor exchanged glances with his aide. How did they know his name? More importantly, how did they know so much about galactic languages and customs that they could speak perfect standard? "Captain Chen, we appreciate your invitation. However, standard first contact protocols require that initial meetings take place via communication systems only." There was a pause before Captain Chen responded. "Of course, Ambassador. We are familiar with Council protocols. We will establish a visual link." The main screen flickered and suddenly Theknor found himself looking at something that shouldn't exist. Captain Sarah Chen was obviously an alien species, but she looked remarkably similar to several humanoid races in the galaxy. She had pale skin, dark hair tied back in a practical style, and 2 eyes that studied him with uncomfortable intelligence. "Greetings, Ambassador," Captain Chen said with a slight smile. "It's an honor to finally meet representatives of the Galactic Council face to face." "Finally?" Theknor asked. "Are you saying your species has encountered Council forces before?" "Not encountered exactly. We've been watching." The words sent a chill through the diplomatic ship. Theknor had dealt with many dangerous situations, but this calm human female was more unsettling than any warlord he'd ever faced. "Watching from where?" he asked carefully. "Captain Chen, our records show no planet called Earth in any known system. Your technology appears to be far beyond anything in our databases. Where do your people come from?" Captain Chen leaned back in her chair. Behind her, Technor could see a bridge filled with humans working at stations he didn't recognize. The technology looked both primitive and incredibly advanced at the same time. Our homeworld was called Earth, she said simply. As for where we come from now, that's more complicated. We've been nomads for quite some time, Ambassador. Traveling, learning, surviving. Surviving what? The universe, Captain Chen replied. Tell me, Ambassador, how many species has the Council uplifted in the past century? The change of subject caught Technor off guard. I don't see how that's relevant to our discussion. Humor me. Technor hesitated. The question touched on sensitive political matters. The Council has brought 47 primitive species into galactic civilization over the past 100 years. And how many of those species now serve in Council military forces? All of them contribute to galactic defense in their own way. Captain Chen's smile faded. All 47 species were conscripted into your armies within 10 years of first contact. Your uplifting process is really just a method of recruiting soldiers for your territorial wars. Technor felt his diplomatic training take over. Captain Chen, I don't know where you're getting your information, but the Council's integration programs are designed to help primitive species join galactic civilization as equals. As equals? Captain Chen touched something on her console. New images appeared on the screen, detailed recordings of Council military operations. Technor recognized several classified missions from the past decade. Is that why the hegemony strip mines resources from newly integrated worlds? Is that why the Zephyrian Empire uses conscripted soldiers as frontline troops in high-casualty operations? Is that why the Voidwalkers experiment on primitive biology without consent? The ambassador's mouth went dry. These were state secrets known only to the highest levels of Council leadership. How do you have access to classified military records? We told you, Ambassador. We've been watching. For quite some time. Technor's aide whispered urgently in his ear, reminding him of his mission objectives. The ambassador straightened his shoulders and tried to regain control of the conversation. Captain Chen, regardless of your sources of information, the fact remains that your species has appeared in galactic space without proper authorization. The regions you claim to occupy are scheduled for Council expansion. I'm authorized to offer Earth immediate integration into the Galactic Council under Zephyrian oversight. Captain Chen was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice had lost all warmth. I see. And if we refuse this generous offer? The Council maintains order in this galaxy, Captain. Unaffiliated species operating advanced technology pose a security risk. Integration is not optional. So your choice is join or be conquered. I wouldn't put it that way. How would you put it? Technor felt sweat forming under his environmental suit. This conversation was going nowhere good, but his orders were clear. The Council has a responsibility to maintain galactic stability. Species that refuse integration are considered hostile and dealt with accordingly. Captain Chen nodded slowly. I understand, Ambassador. So if we don't submit to Zephyrian oversight, if we don't allow our people to be conscripted into your armies, if we don't hand over our technology and resources, then you'll declare war on us. The Council prefers peaceful solutions, but you'll use force if necessary. If necessary? Yes, Captain Chen stood up from her chair. Ambassador Technor, please convey a message to the Galactic Council. Humanity claims the following regions of space as our territory. Data appeared on the screen, star charts showing vast areas that the Council had believed were empty. We request that Council forces avoid these regions. We have no interest in your territorial disputes or your expansion plans. Captain, you can't simply claim empty space. The Council has laws. The space isn't empty, Ambassador. It's full of species that you haven't discovered yet. Species that we've been protecting from exactly this kind of conversation. Technor stared at the star charts. The claimed territory included dozens of systems that Council surveys had marked as uninhabited. You're saying there are civilizations in those systems? 43 species at various levels of development. Some are spacefaring, others are still learning agriculture. All of them are under human protection. The Council cannot recognize territorial claims based on unverified. We're not asking for recognition, Ambassador. We're informing you of a fact. Those systems are protected. Any Council forces entering that territory will be asked to leave. And if they refuse? Captain Chen's expression didn't change, but somehow the temperature in the room seemed to drop. They will be made to leave. Technor felt his diplomatic instincts screaming danger. Captain Chen, I think there may be some misunderstanding here. The Galactic Council represents the most advanced military powers in the galaxy. We have thousands of ships, millions of soldiers. You appear to have one vessel. Appearances can be deceiving, Ambassador. Are you threatening the Galactic Council? I'm stating facts. The systems we've claimed are protected. Council expansion into those regions will be prevented. This is not a threat, it's simply information you need to have when making your decisions. Technor tried one more time. Captain, perhaps we should arrange a formal meeting with Council leadership. I'm sure we can reach some kind of agreement that benefits everyone. Captain Chen sat back down. Ambassador, I want you to understand something. Humanity has survived things that would destroy your entire civilization. We've learned to live with no home, no allies, and no resources except what we could create or discover. We've had to become very good at surviving against impossible odds. I'm sure your species has faced challenges. The last time someone told us that integration was not optional, Ambassador, that species no longer exists. The words hung in the air like a physical weight. Technor felt his aide step closer, ready to cut the communication link if necessary. I see, Technor said carefully. Well, that is certainly unfortunate. Captain Chen smiled again, but there was no warmth in it this time. Yes, it was. I hope we won't have to repeat that particular lesson. The screen went dark. The communication link had been severed from the human ship. Technor stood in silence for several minutes, replaying the conversation in his mind. Then he turned to his communications officer. Send a priority message to the Council. Tell them we need to convene an emergency session immediately. What should I tell them about the humans' response to our integration offer, sir? Technor looked at the dark hull of the Earthship through the viewing port. Tell them the humans said no. Physics is more like guidelines. Fleet Commander Vex Cole had won 17 major battles and conquered 12 worlds for the Zephyrian Empire. His ships had never retreated, his crews had never mutinied, and his enemies had never escaped. The scars on his blue skin told stories of hand-to-hand combat on burning ships, and the medals on his chest represented the gratitude of an entire empire. But as he stared at the tactical display showing the human vessel, he felt something he hadn't experienced since his first battle 40 years ago. Uncertainty. Report, he ordered his tactical officer. One enemy vessel, sir. Configuration unknown. Mass approximately 2 million tons. Weapon systems unidentified. Defensive capabilities unknown. Vex Cole nodded. The humans had refused the Council's generous offer of integration. They had claimed territory that belonged to the Empire. They had threatened galactic stability with their impossible technology. The response was obvious. Demonstrate the power of the Zephyrian fleet and escort them to the nearest starbase for processing. Signal all ships. Standard escort formation. We approach at combat speed but weapons powered down. This is a show of force, not an attack. The Zephyrian 7th Fleet consisted of 36 ships, including 12 heavy battlecruisers and the flagship Dreadnought Destroyer of Worlds. It was enough firepower to level a planet's defenses or defeat any known alien fleet. Against one enemy ship, it should have been overwhelming. As they approached the human vessel, Vex Cole opened a communication channel. UES Defiance, this is Fleet Commander Vex Cole of the Zephyrian Empire. You are ordered to accompany our fleet to Starbase Omega-7 for processing. Power down your weapons and prepare to be escorted. The response came from Captain Chen, her voice as calm as if she were discussing the weather. Fleet Commander, I appreciate your dedication to duty. However, we must decline your invitation. Please withdraw your ships from this region. Captain Chen, you are outnumbered 36-1. This is not a request. I understand your position, Commander. Nevertheless, we cannot comply. Vex Cole cut the communication and turned to his weapons officer. Target their engines. Minimum power. We want them disabled, not destroyed. Targeting systems cannot lock onto the enemy ship, sir. What do you mean they can't lock on? The weapons officer looked confused. Sir, our computers can see the ship, but every time we try to target it, the lock fails. It's like the ship isn't really there. Vex Cole moved to the weapons station and looked at the display himself. The human ship was clearly visible, solid and massive on their screens. But when the targeting computer tried to lock onto it, the readings went crazy. According to the sensors, the ship was somehow in 17 different locations at once. Manual targeting, fire warning shots across their bow. 2 battle cruisers opened fire with precision energy weapons. The beams lanced across space toward the human ship's front section. designed to pass just close enough to demonstrate serious intent without causing damage. The energy beams struck the human ship's hull and simply disappeared. What happened to our weapons fire? Vex Call demanded. Unknown, sir. Sensors show the beams made contact with their hull, but there's no energy dissipation, no heat signature, nothing. Fire again. This time aim for their sensor array. More energy beams reached out toward the human ship. This time Vex Call watched carefully. The weapons fire struck the dark hull and seemed to be absorbed into it, like water disappearing into sand. But then, impossible as it seemed, the energy reappeared as new beams shooting back at his own ships. Alarms screamed throughout the fleet as their own weapons fire struck their own vessels. Shields absorbed most of the damage, but the message was clear. The humans had somehow redirected their attacks back at them. How is that possible? Vex Call whispered. His science officer was frantically working at her station. Sir, I'm reading massive gravitational distortions around the enemy ship. It's like they're bending space itself. Ships don't bend space. This one does, sir. Vex Call had faced enemy technology before. He'd fought against energy shields, cloaking devices, and advanced armor. But this was something beyond anything in the galactic databases. The humans weren't just using advanced technology. They were using technology that shouldn't exist. All ships, attack formation. Full weapons spread. Target everything, engines, weapons, life support. I want that ship disabled now. 36 ships opened fire at once. Energy beams, projectile weapons, and plasma charges filled space between the fleets. It was enough firepower to destroy a small moon. The human ship moved. It didn't accelerate like a normal ship. It didn't turn or roll or pitch. One moment it was in front of the Zephyrian fleet, and the next moment it was somehow behind them. Vex Call's sensors couldn't track how it had moved. It had simply been in one place and was now in another. Impossible, his navigator shouted. Sir, that ship just moved faster than light without engaging FTL drives. Weapon status, Vex Call ordered. All shots missed, sir. The target wasn't there when our weapons arrived. The human ship was now positioned behind the Zephyrian formation. As Vex Call watched in amazement, small objects began emerging from the human vessel. They looked like fighters, but they moved in ways that made his eyes hurt to follow. Enemy fighters launching, his tactical officer reported. Count as uncertain, sir. What do you mean uncertain? Sir, sensors show 12 fighters, but visual confirmation shows 36. And some of them appear to be in multiple locations simultaneously. The human fighters began their attack run, but instead of approaching the Zephyrian ships, they seemed to phase through them. Vex Call watched in horror as enemy fighters appeared inside his battle cruisers, fired at critical systems from within the ship's own hulls, then vanished again. Damage reports, he shouted. All ships report engine failures, sir. Weapon systems offline across the fleet. Life support is functioning, but navigation is dead. Vex Call stared at his screens in disbelief. In less than 5 minutes, his entire fleet had been disabled by a single enemy ship and a handful of fighters that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. How many casualties? He asked quietly. None, sir. The enemy weapons somehow disabled our systems without harming any crew members. The communication system crackled to life. Captain Chen's voice filled the bridge of every ship in the fleet. Fleet Commander Vex Call, your ships have been disabled, but your crews are unharmed. We have sent distress signals to the nearest Zephyrian bases. Rescue ships will arrive within 6 hours to assist your personnel. Vex Call activated his communication system with shaking hands. How did you do this? Physics is more flexible than your scientists believe, Commander. When you absolutely have to survive, you learn to be creative with the fundamental forces of the universe. This is impossible. No species has this kind of technology. No species that you know of, Captain Chen corrected. Commander, I want you to understand something. We disabled your fleet because we had to, but we could have destroyed it just as easily. We chose not to because we don't believe in unnecessary killing. What do you want from us? We want to be left alone. We want the species under our protection to be left alone. We want the Galactic Council to stop expanding into territories that aren't yours to claim. Vex Call looked around his bridge at the dead displays and silent consoles. His proud fleet floated helpless in space, completely at the mercy of beings who had technology beyond his understanding. And if we refuse? Then you'll learn why the galaxy used to be full of other spacefaring species, Commander. You'll learn why so many star systems have the radioactive signatures of dead civilizations. You'll learn why humanity became so good at survival technology. The communication link closed. Vexcol sat in his command chair and stared at the human ship through his viewing port. It hung in space like a dark monument to impossible physics, a reminder that the universe was far stranger and more dangerous than the Galactic Council had ever imagined. 6 hours later, Zephyrian rescue ships arrived to find the entire 7th Fleet disabled but intact. The human vessel was gone, vanished as mysteriously as it had appeared, but the message had been received throughout the galaxy. News of the encounter spread faster than light through communication networks and trade routes. The 3 great powers that had ruled the galaxy for centuries had been challenged by a single ship from a species that shouldn't exist, and that single ship had won. Within days, something unprecedented began happening across the galaxy. Minor species and colony worlds started declaring independence from the major powers. They claimed to be under human protection, though no human ships had been seen in their systems. The balance of power that had held the galaxy together for 1,000 years was beginning to shift. And somewhere in the dark between the stars, the UES Defiance continued its mission, carrying with it the hopes and fears of an entire galaxy. The hunters become the hunted Supreme Admiral Kexthera had united 3 civilizations that had been enemies for 1,000 years. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had lasted 18 hours, with representatives screaming at each other in 6 different languages. But when the final vote was taken, the decision was unanimous. The human threat had to be eliminated. The combined armada that now approached human space was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. 3,000 ships from the Zephyrian Empire, the Hegemony, and the Voidwalkers moved together in perfect formation. Battleships that had been built to fight each other now served under one command, united by a common enemy. All fleet commanders, report status, Admiral Kexthera ordered from the bridge of the Super Dreadnought Galactic Unity. Zephyrian forces ready, sir. 1,000 ships in attack formation. Hegemony fleet prepared for battle. 900 vessels armed and targeted. Voidwalker contingent standing by. 1,100 ships ready to engage. Admiral Kexthera nodded with satisfaction. Each individual fleet was larger than most entire planetary defense forces. Together, they represented the combined military might of galactic civilization. No single species could stand against such overwhelming force. Long-range sensors report on enemy activity. Sir, we're detecting 1 large vessel in the target zone. Same configuration as the ship that attacked the 7th Fleet. Just 1 ship? Admiral Kexthera couldn't hide his disappointment. After assembling the greatest armada in history, they were facing a single enemy vessel. Are there any other human forces in the area? Negative, sir. Just the 1 ship. Admiral Kexthera had hoped for a real battle, something worthy of the massive force under his command. Still, orders were orders. The humans had refused integration, threatened galactic stability, and demonstrated dangerous technology. They had to be stopped. All ships, standard attack formation. We go in fast and hard. I want that ship vaporized before it can use whatever tricks it used against Commander Vexcol. As the armada approached the human ship, Admiral Kexthera expected to see it flee or at least move to a defensive position. Instead, the vessel simply sat motionless in space waiting for them. The communication system activated, and Captain Chen's voice filled the bridge. But this time she wasn't speaking only to the flagship. Her words were being broadcast on all frequencies, reaching every ship in the armada and beyond. People of the galaxy, she began, her voice calm and clear. My name is Captain Sarah Chen, but I am not really a captain. I am a representative of the human species, and I want to tell you our story. Admiral Kexthera tried to cut the transmission, but his communication officers shook their heads. The human signal was overriding all their systems. 500 years ago, our homeworld was destroyed, Captain Chen continued. Not by war or natural disaster, but by our own mistakes. We poisoned our air, killed our oceans, and made our planet uninhabitable. Those few of us who survived had to learn to live among the stars with no home to return to. Images began appearing on every screen in the armada. The Admiral watched in amazement as detailed star charts showed the path humanity had taken through the galaxy. They had traveled for centuries, moving from system to system, never staying in one place for long. We had no allies, no resources, and no military power. We survived by being smart, being careful, and being very good at running away. We learned to hide in places where others couldn't follow us. We learned to build technology that worked even when everything else failed. More images appeared. Humans living in ships hidden inside asteroid fields, underwater cities on worlds others thought were barren, colonies built in the hearts of gas giants where the pressure would crush any normal vessel. We watched your civilizations grow and expand across the galaxy. We saw you discover faster than light travel, build massive fleets, conquer other species. And we learned to stay out of your way. Admiral Kexthera felt a growing unease. The human ship was still just sitting there, making no move to escape or defend itself. It was like Captain Chen was waiting for something. But we also discovered something that your species have not learned yet. We found out what happens to civilizations that grow too fast, that take too much, that build their power on conquest instead of cooperation. New images appeared on the screens. These showed dead worlds, planets with surfaces turned to glass by massive weapons, space graveyards filled with the wreckage of ships built by species that no longer existed. The galaxy used to be full of life, Captain Chen said quietly. Hundreds of species, thousands of worlds, countless civilizations that rose and fell before your ancestors ever reached the stars. They all made the same mistake. They thought that might made right, that survival meant conquering others. Admiral Kexthera tried to focus on his mission, but the images were disturbing. Archaeological data from council surveys had found similar ruins, but the scale shown in these human records was staggering. We humans learned to survive because we had to. When your entire species is homeless and hunted, you develop technology that others can't imagine. When you have no armies and no allies, you learn to use the universe itself as your weapon. The Admiral's sensor officers suddenly began shouting warnings. Sir, massive gravitational distortions detected throughout the fleet. What kind of distortions? Unknown, sir. It's like space itself is changing around us. Admiral Kexthera looked at his tactical display and felt his confidence begin to crack. His ships were spread out in perfect attack formation across thousands of kilometers of space. But according to the sensors, they were somehow getting closer together without moving. All ships report status, he ordered. The responses came back confused and frightened. Ship captains were reporting that their vessels were in multiple locations at once. Navigation systems were giving impossible readings. Some ships appeared to be occupying the same space as other ships without colliding. Sir, his science officer called out, I think the humans are manipulating local space-time. They're compressing our formation into a smaller area. That's impossible. So was everything else they've done, sir. Captain Chen's voice continued her broadcast, calm and patient as if she were teaching a class instead of facing the largest fleet in galactic history. You see, when you have nowhere to run and nowhere to hide, you learn to make your own spaces to exist in. You learn that the dimensions you can see aren't the only ones available. You learn that physics has suggestions, not laws. More alarms began sounding throughout the armada. Ships were reporting system failures, but not from weapons fire. Their equipment was simply stopping working as if the fundamental forces that powered their technology were being turned off. Engine power failing across the fleet, reported his engineering officer. Weapons systems going offline. Life support is stable, but everything else is shutting down. Admiral Kexthera stared at his tactical display in growing horror. 3,000 ships, the pride of galactic civilization, were being systematically disabled by an enemy they couldn't even see fighting back. Where are their weapons? He demanded. Where are their ships? His sensor officer's voice was barely a whisper. Sir, I think they're everywhere. The display changed, showing sensor readings that made no sense. Empty space around the armada was suddenly full of energy signatures that hadn't been there moments before. Ships were appearing on their screens, but these vessels existed in dimensions that normal sensors couldn't detect. How many of them are there? Admiral Kexthera asked. I can't count them, sir. They seem to be overlapping somehow, existing in the same space but in different dimensional phases. Captain Chen's voice cut through the chaos on the bridge. Admiral Kexthera, you're probably wondering how we're doing this. The answer is simple. We've had 500 years to get very good at survival. When you can't fight your enemies directly, you learn to fight them indirectly. When you can't win through superior firepower, you win by understanding the universe better than they do. The human ship began to change. What Admiral Kexthera had thought was a single vessel started to unfold, revealing its true nature. It wasn't one ship. It was thousands of ships that had been occupying the same space simultaneously. As they phased into normal spacetime, the Admiral realized he wasn't looking at a military fleet. He was looking at an entire civilization. Cities floated in the void, massive structures that housed millions of people, manufacturing facilities that built technology using principles of physics that council scientists didn't understand, agricultural ships that grew food in environments that should have been impossible to create. "This is the UES Defiance," Captain Chen said, and now Admiral Kexthera could see that her ship was actually a city-sized vessel containing entire populations. "But it's not really a warship. It's our home. One of many homes that we've built in the spaces between your spaces, in the dimensions you don't know how to see." The 3,000-ship armada sat helpless in space, their weapons offline and their engines dead. Around them, human civilization revealed itself in all its impossible glory. Ships that existed in multiple dimensions, weapons that used spacetime itself as ammunition, technology that turned the very concepts of physics into tools for survival. "Now," Captain Chen said, her voice still calm but carrying an undertone of steel that made Admiral Kexthera's blood run cold. "New galactic order." The neutral station materialized around the disabled galactic fleet like a flower blooming in space. Admiral Kexthera watched through his viewport as the human construction ships assembled the massive structure in real time, pulling materials from dimensions he couldn't see, and building with technology that made galactic engineering look like children playing with blocks. In less than 6 hours, a diplomatic facility larger than most space stations hung in the void between the human vessels and the stranded armada. It was beautiful in a way that hurt to look at, with curves and angles that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions. "Admiral," his communication officer called out, "we're receiving an invitation from the humans. They want all council leadership to meet aboard the station." Admiral Kexthera had commanded fleets and conquered worlds, but he had never felt as small as he did, walking through the corridors of the human station. The walls seemed to shift and flow around him, and he kept seeing doorways that led to rooms that couldn't possibly fit in the space available. The main conference chamber was worse. It was simultaneously intimate and vast, with a ceiling that showed real-time images of space outside while somehow also displaying the inner workings of distant galaxies. Around a table that looked like it was carved from crystallized starlight sat the most powerful beings in galactic civilization, all of them looking as confused and frightened as he felt. Captain Chen was no longer alone. She sat at the head of the table, but now Admiral Kexthera could see that she wasn't really a captain at all. The other humans in the room deferred to her with the respect given to someone of much higher rank. When she spoke, it was with the authority of someone accustomed to making decisions for entire civilizations. "Admirals, hegemons, void speakers," she began, using the formal titles of each species' leadership. "Thank you for accepting our invitation. I believe introductions are in order. I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Confederacy." Admiral Kexthera found his voice. "Human Confederacy? You represent more than just one ship?" "Much more. The vessel you encountered was just one of our mobile cities. Humanity currently maintains 47 such installations throughout this region of space, along with permanent settlements in over 300 star systems." The silence in the room was deafening. 300 systems meant millions, possibly billions of humans, an entire civilization that had existed right under their noses without them knowing it. Hegemon Ralthes spoke next, his voice carefully controlled. "Admiral Chen, our surveys of those systems showed them to be uninhabited. Your surveys looked for the kind of life you understand," Admiral Chen replied. "We've learned to live in the spaces between spaces, in dimensions your sensors can't detect. We've also learned to help other species do the same thing." She touched the table's surface and new images appeared in the air above them, star maps showing the systems that humans claimed. But now the maps revealed the truth. Each system teemed with life, not just human settlements, but dozens of other species that had been developing under human protection. "These are the 43 species I mentioned to Ambassador Theknor," Admiral Chen continued. "Some are spacefaring civilizations that chose to remain hidden rather than face council integration. Others are developing societies that we've been protecting from premature contact with galactic civilization." Admiral Kexthera stared at the images. Some of the species looked familiar. They matched descriptions of civilizations that had mysteriously vanished from council space over the past century. Others were completely unknown. Their technology and biology unlike anything in galactic databases. You've been stealing our target civilizations. Void Speaker Nix Omega accused. We've been offering them a choice, Admiral Chen corrected. Join the Council and become conscripted soldiers in your territorial wars, or accept human protection and develop at their own pace as free societies. And they chose you over us? Admiral Kexthara couldn't hide his disbelief. Every time, not one species has chosen Council integration when presented with an alternative. The galactic leaders exchanged glances. This was worse than a military defeat. This was proof that their entire system of expansion and control was built on coercion, rather than genuine appeal. Hegemon Ralthes leaned forward. What do you want from us, Admiral Chen? You've demonstrated your technological superiority. You could destroy our fleets, conquer our worlds. Why are we sitting here talking? Admiral Chen was quiet for a moment before answering. Because we learned something during our 500 years of exile, Hegemon. We learned that the strongest civilizations are not those that can destroy others, but those that help others become stronger than themselves. I don't understand. Survival taught us that cooperation is more powerful than conquest. When we had nothing, other species could have wiped us out easily. Instead, some of them helped us. They shared resources, taught us new technologies, gave us safe harbor when we needed it. Those acts of kindness saved our species. Admiral Chen stood and walked to the viewing wall, which showed the combined human and galactic fleets floating peacefully in space. We want to transform galactic civilization, not conquer it. We want to replace your system of territorial expansion with something better, a true confederacy of equals, where each species contributes its strengths and receives protection for its weaknesses. And if we refuse? Admiral Kexthara asked quietly. Admiral Chen turned back to face them. Then you'll discover why the galaxy used to have so many more civilizations than it does now. You'll learn what happened to the species that built the dead worlds your archaeologists have found. You'll understand why humanity had to become so good at survival technology. The threat hung in the air like a physical weight, but it wasn't delivered with anger or hatred. Admiral Chen spoke like someone explaining a natural law. Gravity pulls objects down, fire burns. Civilizations that build their power on conquest eventually destroy themselves. What exactly are you proposing? Void Speaker Nix Omega asked. Complete restructuring of galactic government. An end to territorial expansion through conquest. The liberation of all conscripted species. The establishment of a confederation based on voluntary cooperation instead of forced integration. Impossible, Hegemon Ralthes said immediately. Our entire economy is based on resource extraction from integrated worlds. Our military power depends on conscripted forces. You're asking us to give up everything that makes us strong. I'm asking you to give up everything that makes you weak, Admiral Chen corrected. Your expansion model is unsustainable. Eventually, you run out of species to conquer and resources to extract. Then your civilizations collapse from internal conflicts just like all the others did. She returned to the table and activated more displays. These showed long-term projections of galactic civilization, population growth, resource depletion, territorial conflicts, and economic collapse. Our analysis indicates that the current council system will fail within 200 years, probably less. The territorial wars are escalating, the conquered species are becoming restless, and you're running out of new worlds to exploit. Admiral Kexthara studied the projections and felt a chill run down his spine. The human analysis matched classified council reports that predicted increasing instability in the coming decades. What makes you think your way would work any better? He asked. Because we've already tested it. The 43 species under our protection have formed a working confederation. They share resources voluntarily, contribute military forces only for defensive purposes, and develop new technologies through cooperation instead of conquest. Their combined growth rate exceeds anything the Council has achieved. Admiral Chen sat back down and looked at each galactic leader in turn. We're offering you a choice. Transform your civilizations into something sustainable, or continue on your current path until you destroy yourselves. But understand, we will not allow you to destroy the species we protect in the process. You would go to war with the entire galaxy to protect a few dozen primitive species? Admiral Kexthara asked. We would go to war with the entire galaxy to protect the future, Admiral Chen replied. But we'd prefer not to. War is wasteful, destructive, and unnecessary when cooperation is possible. The meeting continued for hours. The galactic leaders argued, threatened, and pleaded. But in the end, they all reached the same conclusion: they had no choice. The humans had technology beyond their understanding, an entire hidden civilization backing them up, and the moral authority that came from offering a better way forward. One by one, the three great powers agreed to the human terms. It would take years to implement the changes, decades to completely transform galactic civilization. But the alternative was destruction, and they had seen enough human technology to know that destruction was a very real possibility. As the leaders prepared to return to their fleets, Admiral Kexthera approached Admiral Chen privately. "Why?" he asked. "Why go to all this trouble to save civilizations that would have destroyed you if they could?" Admiral Chen smiled, and for the first time since their encounter began, it was a genuinely warm expression. "Because someone saved us once, Admiral. When humanidad